I have a special guest with me on the line, one of my favorite people in the world. That's Ann Coulter, the goddess of the online right herself. Ann, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Every day is morning in Trump's America.
It is amazing how you're already starting to see potential in America now for increase in jobs and for increase in our ability to work with people around the world. The headlines are already looking really good. We had a story from Breitbart earlier this week on how his approval rating's up 9% already. I think it's because all the haters are making him look good. He's really off to a nice little start here.
Yes, he is. And I'm happy every day. You know, that moment when you first wake up in the morning and you're just finishing your dream like your dog chasing the post truck.
Yes.
And then you realize, oh, no, I'm a human and I'm awake and it's Trump's America.
Yeah. So you actually have housing starting to soar. You got the dollar at the 14-year high. Ford's going to stay. It looks like Apple's considering making iPhones here again. I mean, it's kind of wild, and that all the things we said could potentially come true seem to be happening, and he's 2 months from becoming president.
Yes. I mean, you do have this worry. He's got to do what he said he's going to do, but it's not really that hard. I think he's going to do it. All of these hysterics. I mean, take the wall itself. I always think it's good to, when it comes to immigration, always be paranoid. You can never be too paranoid. But that is, which a lot of people don't realize, that's the Department of Defense's job. They've built walls with cannon turrets. As the name of the agency suggests, Department of Defense, the defense refers to the defense of the United States of America, not the defense of South Korea, not the defense of Ukraine, not the defense of Syria or Germany. That is 100% the job of the Department of Defense, and the most extravagant, insane Washington Post fake news estimates of what the wall would cost. It would cost less than 5% of the Department of Defense's entire budget. So that's a very simple thing to do as long as he appoints the right Department of Defense secretary. It's very easy to get Mexico to pay for it. Just deduct it from their foreign aid. I mean, he says he's going to take other steps, request that they pay, tax remittances, which is a fine idea, but if all else fails, just stop sending them the federal aid. That'll pay for it in, a couple of years. We know he's going to renegotiate the trade deals. We know that Congress has been working on. It took me like 3 days after the election to remember, I'm going to have health care again, because I, unlike all of you people listening who have jobs and therefore have a waiver from Obamacare, I, Matt Drudge, sole practitioners, we were all thrown off our health care plans. I have a letter saying that your health care plan has been made illegal under the Affordable Care Act. So
I thought you could keep your plan.
It turns out you can't, Alex.
You're saying that was fake news when they reported that you could keep your plan. Now, Ann, we have so much to get to. I want to plug the book, In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome. I've read it. I'm going to reread it in all likelihood, because I do think it's important that we hold Trump accountable for his promises. And you really wrote the quickest history in terms of his primary run and how it was really ideas-driven. It wasn't just personality-driven. That he led on trade, he led on immigration, he made law enforcement a focus, all this type of stuff that was really basic for everyday Americans. And he never gets credit for that. He only gets credit for his reality show. So it's an important book. Everyone should check it out. We got a lot to go through, and I want to start with this fake news idea. Earlier this week we had Barack Obama. He stepped in himself, saying that he doesn't want fake news. Then we have the New York Times literally printing smears, false lies about Breitbart, calling us a birther site. We went out of our way to distance ourselves from any sort of talk that Obama was born anywhere other than Hawaii. And even when we wrote up stories, like you might recall, Joel Pollack years ago broke a story that there was a pamphlet that says Obama was born in Kenya for a speakers bureau. And we even put a disclaimer on it. So just so people could be perfectly clear, we still believe he's born in Hawaii despite this. And yet New York Times still just prints just flat out lies about us. BuzzFeed printing flat out lies. BuzzFeed has now brought my wife into it. That's what they do because they're classy guys over there at BuzzFeed, who has nothing to do with any of this. So, but yet it's fake news that they're going after. Talk to us about the concept of fake news and where you really think it's coming from.
Well, a lot of this is in Trump We Trust. All of the phony stories that they've pushed about Donald Trump, from the mocking of a disabled reporter claiming that that he had said Megyn was referring to Megyn Kelly's menstrual period, that he lied about Muslims celebrating the 9/11 attack. That's incidentally what led to his making fun of the reporter, Serge Kovaleski, in a way that bears no resemblance to Serge's disability, and it's the exact same imitation Donald Trump does whenever he's imitating a flustered person, including himself, including Ted Cruz, including a general. You can see the videos. They're just outright lies being pushed. I must say, I think the most astonishing one this week was of your personal former commander-in-chief and now chief strategist for the magnificent President-elect Trump, Steve Bannon. America's leading hate group, the Southern Poverty Law Center, has put out a report claiming that Steve Bannon said that African Americans are more violent than other people. It turns out, when you trace back the quote, he said nothing about African Americans. He said maybe the people being shot are more violent or were committing crimes. I think that's what it is. Says something about how, men are more violent than women. I noticed that it's all men being shot in these police shootings. So the Southern Poverty Law Center took a quote that some people are more violent than others and inserts African American. They just inserted that.
And it's the same thing. This is exactly like how Breitbart, which we've talked for years about being a nationalist website, they've somehow added the word white onto it, which is it came out of nowhere. It just out of nowhere. They just said, well, let's just add white to the front of it and see if we can get away with it. And believe it or not, they did. It's a it's
amazing. This Hitler, David Duke, white nationalist, white supremacist. It's all they can say. I really did not think they were this. I hate to say it, but sometimes people are stupid. They were this stupid, naive, tone deaf. No, they are in the bubble, and I think that's part of the reason Donald Trump's approval ratings, and approval ratings for Trump supporters, I might add, are just going to keep going up. It's the most airheaded, arrogant celebrities and coastal elites. They're leading the team now. They have moved out the entire middle part of the country, the entire middle class, the entire working class, and everything they do is offensive to a normal person. This is how they're going to attack Donald Trump and his supporters. Fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's not working. It's still frustrating to witness it because whenever anyone tries to drag your name through the mud, which you know even better than we do at Breitbart, perhaps, Ann, though I have to say, I do think Breitbart has now become the most maligned news company in the history of the United States. And that's a badge of honor, I believe. But you're someone who's taken slings and arrows over the years. Any tips for Breitbart or Breitbart supporters out there for this incredible barrage of lies and hate?
Yes, watch me and watch Donald Trump. Absolutely, positively, never appease, never compromise, never apologize, even if you might have phrased something differently. Absolutely never apologize. The attacks on Breitbart, to contrast that, to have this going on simultaneously with, I like to hate watch, so it's a lot of MSNBC and some CNN. And all of these people, all these smug, arrogant prognosticators who the day before the election, months before the election, Anna Navarro, Charlie Sykes, all of the consultants, Stuart Stevens, Mike Murphy, Matthew Dowd, one of my favorites, their sneering contempt. And Trump, first Trump was never going to get the nomination, and then there was going to be a contested convention, and then it was going to be the most historic wipeout ever. And you would think, among the things I thought of in the days after the magnificent November 8th election was, at least we won't have to hear from those guys again. Nope, you would be wrong. You would be wrong if you thought that. You turn on your TV, and all of the people who have been not only wrong, people can get things wrong now and then. I'm I'm not being arrogant about that, but they were smug and arrogant and sneering. And as that column I wrote earlier this year, the two people who've been saying, no, Trump is going to win the nomination and will very likely win the presidency, the only ones I knew of on TV were me and you. and we are 100% blacklisted from, these serious news sites. And now we're hearing again from all the people who've gotten it wrong for the last 16 months. Well, tell us what's going to happen in the future. It's one thing if they were inviting them on to say, whoa, mea culpa, I was totally wrong. You guys have got to hang on everything Breitbart says, Alex Marlowe says, Ann Coulter says.
Yeah,
no,
right.
They're coming on to now make new predictions about what Trump will do.
It's funny, Ann, because you highlighted a time that I was on CNN about 18 months ago where I specifically said that Trump was going to do fine with Hispanics. I didn't say that he was going to do amazing. I didn't say he was going to do worse than anyone else. And that's exactly how he did. He basically a slight improvement over Mitt Romney despite all the hate thrown his way. It wasn't like he got all of the Hispanics that he should, because I think it's going to be a process getting those people into the Republican voter rolls, and it'll happen, but it's going to take time. But I was basically right on the money, and I got to say that people only want to talk to me to call me a Nazi and a racist.
And I wrote that column like 6 months after seeing you on TV, thinking, oh, finally, someone on TV someone is allowed on TV to say something that is true. And 6 months later, I did a Nexus search. Nope, Alex Marlowe doesn't show up again.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's because the rule is I'm either banned or they have to spend the whole time making me explain why I'm not a racist, which is...
Oh, my gosh, that's my whole career.
Yeah, it's one or the other. It's explain when did you stop beating your wife? It's like,
right.
It's okay, this is the rules of the game, but this brings us back to fake news. Fake news, and if you notice, a lot of the smears against Breitbart, by the way, come from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is really a hateful...
America's leading hate group.
A hateful left-wing group. And it's never identified as that. Breitbart is either alt-right, who even knows what that means, I barely do, or far-right. They never introduce the SPLC as far-left hate group. SPLC. Why is it? Well, why do they allow for this, Ann?
It is because the rest of the news is fake news. I mean, it's funny. I've said you can always tell what liberals are guilty of by what they accuse you of.
Yes, the projection.
And what are they doing here? They're accusing the one news site or I'm sure there were a few others who are also being called fake news sites now, but the news sites that got basically everything right over the past 16 months, while the entire, I guess it's still called mainstream media news, certainly television news, massively, hilariously wrong. No, now they turn and attack the websites that now have been proved accurate. They're the ones that are being called fake news. That's what we know they're guilty of.
Right. It's a total social justice warrior thing. It's coming straight from the left. And I think what they're trying to do is they're long-term. They're going to try to either suppress or ban Breitbart from social media and from Google so that no one can get to our content unless you go straight away to the front page. And by the way, if Hillary Clinton was president, I guarantee you she'd try to shut us down entirely.
Yes, I think you're going to do fine now that it's Trump's America. And by the way, there's an alternative to Twitter starting up, which is Gab AI. I've just signed up. And they're not going to do any censorship, which, I don't know, sounds like a good idea to me. How about no censorship?
Well, because the censors always turn out to be the totalitarian left-wing fascists. It's
right.
every time. It's never the censors are always just, we get the most reasonable centrist person in the country, and we have them determine what's free speech and what's not free speech. We always get people like Barack Obama and people like these social justice warriors on the left and people in the journalism university programs. Like, oh, these are the people who are going to determine what we can and can't say. No, thank you.
No, in fact, you just gave me a flashback to my First Amendment course in law school, which was a long time ago. And a prominent First Amendment scholar, Fred Schauer, now at Harvard Law School, I remember when we were doing a class on, I don't know, forms of censorship, what books libraries carry or don't carry. And I don't know if it was a question from the audience or if he just volunteered this point, but he said, no, I know all of you are imagining this is like fundamentalist Christians who see satanic images in Bambi. Let me tell you, the calls for censorship are all coming from the left these days. It's for Huckleberry Finn, or there's sexism in this, sexism in that. And that was 20 years ago, Alex. It's been, the censorship impulse has come pretty much 100%. I mean, I'm sure there is they can find some tiny crackpot Christian cult someplace in the country that
yeah, of course they could, but that's not relevant, Ann. And here's the thing, and we got into this a little bit on the show earlier in the week, and I was talking about how the David Dukes of the world and the KKK of the world, whether or not they would prefer Trump over Hillary, it doesn't matter because they're not on anyone's radar. There's no meetings where people are saying, well, you know, this could really unify the country, but David Duke is against it and the KKK is against it, so we can't do that. That's never going to happen in Trump's America, and everyone knows that. And have you ever once considered what the far fringe racist right has ever thought with your writing? You're one of the most prominent thinkers on the right.
And as you know, I kind of think David Duke doesn't exist because I only hear about him every 4 years when Democrats or the media need to smear a Republican.
Exactly. I don't care about David Duke. You don't care about David Duke. The Huffington Post cares about David Duke.
Care about David Duke. You could not be a more irrelevant person for an irrelevant organization. I've known FBI agents over the years, and they used to tell me, you know, they'd send out agents to infiltrate these Klan meetings, and then discover there were more agents than there were Klan members.
Yes.
I mean, in the entire country. And David Duke left the Klan 20 years ago. Seriously, is he still alive? This is the craziest boogeyman.
The only time you hear about him is from the Huffington Post when they're looking for a boogeyman. That's exactly right, and it's a lie, and it's fake news. But will Huffington Post, with their 98% chance Hillary is going to win, are they going to get branded as hate news? How about Rolling Stone? Is that fake news with their rape hoaxes?
No, they are totally projecting. They have been making up stories, making up hoax hate crimes, many of which I go through in Guilty. I mean, this isn't a new phenomenon. Liberals love to be victims. That's the thesis of that book, how everybody wants to be a victim. And in fact, I should have called it, because a point I've been making forever that only conservatives seem to grasp, I should have called Guilty, titled, "You're Not Black." Everybody wants to be an African American because we do owe African Americans something. I mean, I don't think creating an entitlement society and destroying the black family was a nice thing to do to them. But still, yes, of course, set aside affirmative action, special. You ought to be able to sue. You notice whenever, whether it's gays, women, immigrants, whenever they are demanding some special favor that's a violation of, you know, people's right to associate, they always say, well, what if this were a black person? No, civil rights are for black people. That's it. Now, that's the end of the list. It would be great if we could get that a little bit more clarified.
Yeah, it would be. Ann Coulter, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, I'm going to ask you about more of these attacks on Steve Bannon, some of the new Trump appointees, what you're looking for from him, and more on this special edition of Breitbart News with Alexander Marlowe.
If you missed any of Breitbart News, check out SiriusXM.com/on-demand to listen to the entire show whenever you want. In the meantime, it's back to the studio with Breitbart News.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the special edition of Breitbart News Daily. It's special because this is one that's made to be broadcast over and over and over, but it's special really to me because Ann Coulter's on with me. And one of the things that's been very fun about actually getting things right in this election is I get to talk to you more often because you were one of my heroes growing up, and now we're friends, which is pretty cool. So and
I don't have to write mysteries.
You don't have to write mysteries, and I want to get to that, but I want to talk more about some of this commentator class. Has anyone been fired yet for getting it wrong the whole time for 18 months?
Great question. No, and they should all be.
Yeah, they should all be fired. Not a single person. There's not even one Dick Morris out there who said, okay, you got it wrong too many times. You got to go find a new way to make a living. It's literally the exact same people who got everything wrong the whole way around. It's every network. And not to mention, has anyone on CNN got up and stood up and said, you know what? All of this trying to guilt by association Breitbart with white supremacists and white nationalists and making up all these lies because we don't like Donald Trump and we're upset that he won is not news, and I'm going to move on and do something else with my life. Has one person been brave enough to do that?
No, they're turning into the biggest political comedy shows on TV, all of these alleged serious TV shows. No, and again, it's not just getting things wrong. They're putting their finger on the scale, libeling the nominee of one of two major parties in this country. The incessant. I believe every New York Times op-ed columnist. This was about the time I had to stop reading it, and I've been their most loyal reader since law school. I read them every day. I get the enemy playbook delivered right to my front door.
Exactly.
I haven't been able to do it starting, I don't know, probably whenever the last op-ed columnist wrote the deep think piece on the amazing similarities between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. Yeah. That's the New York Times.
Yeah. No, they're going for it now. They've got BuzzFeed was linking me to Nazis, which I'm going to have to tell my Jewish mother about that I've actually been a closet Nazi, and and also my Jewish bosses. I'll have to tell them, and my Jewish colleagues like Joel Pollack and Aaron Klein. I'm going to have to tell them. I'm going to have to break it to them that BuzzFeed has outed me.
Well, this is one of the great things Bannon said in his interview with Hollywood Reporter, which I was tweeting out last week.
Yeah.
It's such a clear and brilliant insight, and that is the alt-right, as they're calling it, which none of us have ever heard of until this year. It's primarily composed of apparently 14-year-old boys who so hate political correctness that they go around trolling liberal journalists. And so they can get themselves called racist, anti-Semitic, sexist, whatever, Islamophobics, whatever it is. That's like a score for them, not because they are any of these things, but because they so hate political correctness.
Yes. So Ann, I was talking to you offline, and I was saying that it's kind of been a shame because of all this hate that's been directed our way that I haven't been having enough fun since we won. And it's important to remind people that we did win, and we should be celebrating. We shouldn't be acting like someone died. We should be acting like we're on top of the world. And you're doing that for me, which I really appreciate. So how have you been celebrating?
Let's see. I've been having lots of celebratory dinners with my friends, people who have been... One of my friends, you just could not get her out, and even she came out. She was volunteering at Trump Tower, making calls for him, and in Manhattan we had one of our many celebratory dinners. I spoke at Restoration Weekend, the weekend afterwards, and mostly I would say I'm reading a lot more of the hate websites and doing more hate watching, because even though some would say it's not a productive use of my time to spend half the day online, and then, no, I'm spending too much time on the Internet. I need to watch some TV, and then watch the hate sites on TV. It makes me laugh. They're so insane and so irrelevant.
Well, the only thing that the left hates more than us having a great time is when we get to govern, and we do get to govern now. And so walk me through what you're looking for in terms of Trump's cabinet appointees.
Chris Kobach. Have I mentioned Chris Kobach?
A few times, and you've mentioned him to me a couple times in private, and I told you, I said that you've got to introduce him to America, because I know Drudge finally linked to something on him recently, but I think he's mostly unknown even to the Breitbart audience. And by the way, this is Alex Morello with Ann Coulter. Her book, In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome, is more important now than ever. But talk to us about Chris Kobach and why you think he needs to be in the administration.
Well, first of all, like you and me, Alex, there's a reason you don't see him on TV. He's totally brilliant. Harvard, Yale Law, Oxford, and not as a cheesy Rhodes Scholar.
Low information voter.
Yes, he's tall, good-looking, has a lovely family. He's from Kansas. He would already be a governor or a senator. I mean, he's a young guy, but he'd be a governor or a senator, but for the fact that it's Kansas, and they already have a Republican governor and 2 Republican senators. But most importantly, he is the brains behind basically everything good that's been done on immigration, and that's nothing for the last 8 years, but
Wow.
at least during the Bush administration. He wrote E-Verify. He wrote that. You'll remember this. I write about it in Trump We Trust, the hysterically denounced Papers, Please law, as they called the Arizona law, saying that law enforcement officers, if they arrest someone and have probable cause to believe he's an illegal, they can ask about his immigration status. That was written by Chris Kobach, and all you heard was nonsense about it on, it was like Nazi Germany, and that part of the law upheld by the Supreme Court. You can go and see him talking about it outside the Supreme Court. I think it was the day of the argument. And these are common sense policies. I mean, you know our friend Stephen Miller, Trump's speechwriter, and Jeff Sessions. You hear the left-wing description of these things. Take the Muslim registry. I mean, I prefer, hey, I know, don't let them in the first place. And instead of what we're doing now, letting them in, there are more than 1,000 terrorist investigations in this country right now that our FBI, which you have to pay for, taxpayer,
Right.
is paying for in all 50 states of the union. Here's an idea. Don't let in people whom we need to assign 16 FBI agents to watch for the rest of their lives.
It's actually a jobs program for the FBI. That's really what it's all about.
Right. But Kobach, during the Bush administration, wrote something they all talk about, including, Mr. Open Borders, Fox News' golden boy, Marco Rubio. We can't keep track of the people coming in. We need an entry-exit system. And so that's what Kobach wrote up for during the Bush administration after 9/11. It's an entry-exit visa system. You can go around screaming, it's like Nazi Germany, we're registering Muslims. No, but there will be a little more close attention paid to the exit and entry visas of people coming in from terrorist-producing countries, which, again, I say would be solved much more efficiently by just not letting them in.
Yes, and this is a position that I think is going to be interesting to see if Trump, who had that position during the primaries, if he's going to be able to pull it off as policy when he becomes president. What do you think?
Well, this is why, he does need the right people around him, and I guess what I'm concerned, we'll see what happens. I love Bannon being the chief strategist. That's definitely a step in the right direction, but I love Rudy Giuliani. I have a love letter to him in my book. I think it isn't Muggs. I forget which book. Maybe it was Guilty. But anyway, what he did in New York, it's magnificent. He was the best defender of Donald Trump on TV. But he did make New York a sanctuary city. And even if these guys say, okay, I've learned my lesson, Mr. President-elect, I am with you on immigration. We need somebody like Jeff Sessions, like Chris Kobach, like Steve Miller, who are reading the fine print on these bills, who know how to push through the policies that they already have the legal and constitutional authority to do, as I was mentioning at the beginning of this interview, such as Department of Defense building the wall. No need for Congress to worry its pretty little head about that wall. That is 100% within the purview of the duties of the commander-in-chief under our Constitution. And that's why you need someone like Chris Kobach, who is smart and has read the law and knows how to implement the policies we need implemented. And I'd also say, look, obviously the trade deals are a huge part of this. I completely trust Trump on that. He's been prattling about that for 40 years. But I go back to the point that the single most important thing President Trump can do is on immigration, with the reminder that if this exact same election, in every way exactly the same, in fact, I'll even, take the Washington Post's entire coverage out of it to give Trump an advantage. This same election run 4 years from now on our current immigration policies, and Donald Trump would have lost. A lot of those battleground states were decided 49-48. And we've seen what the Obama administration is doing, just hauling in the third world. They don't speak English, but they can be instructed to look for symbols and know which party to vote for. And where are they being moved? They are being moved to the battleground states. 4 more years, the country becomes California, and it's over. There is no hope for anything anymore. So immigration has got to be the most important thing, which is why we need Chris Kobach, Secretary of State of Kansas, to be Director or Secretary of the Homeland Security Department.
Wow, that is a powerful that's a powerful statement, Ann. And I was thinking about while you were talking about it that you were pretty. I guess you thought that this election really was everything was on the line, and I was kind of thinking to myself that that can't be the case. We're going to keep fighting. We could maybe save America even if we lose this one because we still got powerful places like Breitbart that are out there and growing. But if you really reflect on it and you see the reaction to the Trump victory, this war on freedom of speech that is so prevalent now on the left, it's taken over the left, that they're just going to crack down on speech. And you know that they were going to leave the border open, which means we essentially don't have a country. Because it's a binary. It's either you have a border and a country, or you do not have a border and you don't have a country. You just have and you know they would amnesty, or at least try to amnesty, just tens of millions of more undocumented Democrats, and that's Jay Leno's quote. You really think if you lose free speech and you have no border, then how could you possibly have America? And that's what we averted here.
Yes. No, and incidentally, I mean, among all my friends, I'm always the Pollyannish one. But I really did think, and I felt sorry for young pups like you coming up, you're just getting involved in politics, because there would be no point. As the same way there's no point to caring about state politics in California. All you're going to do is lose.
Yes.
And there's a beautiful quote from Ronald Reagan, where I think it was before the Grenada invasion. Some advisors came in and they're telling him, we don't know how this will play and the networks will turn against you. We're worried how this will look. And Ronald Reagan just popping jelly beans and said, you can always trust the American people. And I do believe that's true, but unfortunately, the Democrats know that's true, and that's why they've been bringing in foreigners to outvote the American people.
That's brilliant.
So when you look back at other periods in history, which is what people would say to me, there were other dark times, and what about after Watergate? Yeah, there were dark times, but I could count on the American people. Now, the American people, if anything, I mean, I ask your listeners, I know lots of people who've switched parties in the last decade or so, or in my lifetime. I would say, off the top of my head, 100% Democrat to Republican. But those people are being outvoted. And that is it is literally an existential threat to the United States of America. You hear that phrase used all the time. No, this is where it is. It's for our own country. And your point you were making earlier about how, yes, we'll win over Hispanics eventually, I agree with that. But it takes time.
It takes time.
And we're doing
Generations.
the Sorcerer's Apprentice thing. You know, as we're converting the ones who were brought in a few years ago, the Democrats are bringing in another million.
Yeah, they're bringing 5 times as many. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the problem with America for Democrats, Ann, is that there's just too many Americans in it. That's how.
And thank God they came out to vote this year. Oh, thank God Donald Trump decided to run, and I am not taking the Lord's name in vain. I mean that literally. This is the last Christian country on earth. And weirdly enough, this crazy, loudest reality TV star billionaire is going to save it for us.
Yeah, but as you correctly pointed out, part of it is because he was correct on the key issues first.
Yeah.
This is Alex Marlowe and Ann Coulter on a special edition of Breitbart News Daily. One more segment with Ann. When we return, I'm going to get her take on the media hysteria, and I got a theory it's actually helping the people like she and I. And I'm going to get her take on Donald Trump's conflicts of interest with his businesses. Are there conflicts of interest? We'll see. And also, maybe we'll figure out what Ann's doing for Thanksgiving. I don't know if she'll disclose. 866-95-PATRIOT, Breitbart News.
Andrew Breitbart's Vision, brought to you in audio form. It's Breitbart News on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
Back to business, Breitbart News Daily, special edition. Alexander Marlowe along with Ann Coulter. It's such a pleasure, Ann, to speak to such a glamorous blonde. I've got it. I like glamorous blondes, especially the smart ones who are right on all the issues. So
Thank you.
Let's get right back to it. I want to get your take on the media hysteria surrounding Donald Trump, really from the start, really around so many Republicans. I think it was Dennis Prager who reminded me that or reminded his audience that that they said Ronald Reagan was going to bring the KKK back to the White House also. So it's not like this is a new tactic. But I think the media hysteria now, I think people are watching CNN and they're going, these people are crazy and I don't want to be with them and I'm going to go check out the other guys for a while, especially when you have someone like a Trump who's a non-ideologue out there. It's sort of painful now, Ann, but I feel like this could help.
Yes, no, I agree. I mean, there's this weird phenomenon going on where they describe taking a normal common sense position. For example, caring about Americans' workers, wanting to protect the country. Well, that's racist. That's anti-Semitic. People must be, involved people must be sitting back thinking, well, then I must be a racist and anti-Semite because I like those ideas. If they're going to label good ideas, put hateful labels on them, people are going to check out, well, who's saying that? Because I didn't realize that, you and I, Alex, were the leaders of a white supremacist movement.
Right.
I'm going to have to check my notes here. But
CNN said so, okay. and they're not fake news, so we know it must be true. So give me your take. I wanted to ask you a serious question here about Trump and his conflicts of interest with his business, and there's, rumors that his kids are going to be working for this business and for the administration, and they're going to be I don't quite get it. I mean, what do you think is going on here?
Well, I mean, this is the problem with having a media that isn't behaving as a media. I actually think there are issues here. And I don't know the answer, for example, to what he should do with his businesses.
Yes.
I think a normal person looks at that and sees, well, yeah, that is a problem. You're going to end up with a Clinton cash problem.
Right.
Still running these businesses, but he's a sui generis. There's no president like him who has come into office running enormous international businesses. So it's a new case. It does need to be considered seriously. He can't hire his children. That's madness. But none of the same points can be made by people who actually care about Trump and want his administration to succeed. Because I was just watching some TV on this today, and there you have all the slanders, and then they throw in something about the conflicts of interest with his business. Well, at that point in the interview, I've already decided the interviewee is a lunatic. And so I think a normal person isn't paying attention to that. But these are issues. They do need to be looked at seriously. It may be that his kids, I don't know if they could they may have to sell off a lot of the businesses or wind down, or it's at least got to be turned all over to them, and even then there are problems. But these are serious issues, and because we don't have a serious media, they're busy, talking about fat-shaming Miss Universe.
Right.
For an entire week, I would say 2 weeks of a presidential campaign were expended on the woman who drove the getaway car and had sex on camera, and Trump's alleged fat-shaming of her. That's our media. That's the serious
right, but we can't talk about anything serious because we have to waste time on that, and that's why the media hysteria is so destructive. Is because it means that they don't have credibility when we actually do want to figure out. I'm genuinely curious what's the best thing to do, considering that this is unprecedented, that a president has so many business endeavors, and it can't be a quick or easy process to pass the reins off to those and to make sure that he's legally and ethically clear of, there's some distance between his businesses and his administration. That's all fascinating stuff, but who do you go to trust it? I mean,
exactly.
Because everyone is so partisan now, and Breitbart included, but we have almost no choice at this point because we're maligned and people are trying to make adversaries out of us instead of trying to be respectful and having us all pursue the same goal of truth. But that's the problem, man, is that the media is no longer focused on truth, not even a little bit.
No, well, they are focused on truth. They want to stamp it out and call it white supremacy.
Wow. Powerful. So let me ask you about so we've had a lot of pretty serious talk today, which is good because there's a lot of big issues, and we'll have you on regularly to get your assessment of how things are going in Trump's America. But I wanted to ask, because we had so much time, I wanted to ask a personal question because I know you're a big mystery person. You like thrillers. You were going to write fiction and stuff. How come you still don't want to do that anyway, even though Trump's going to be in there?
Well, maybe I will. I was trying to come up with some way to solace myself with the fact, or console myself, if America was finished on November 8th. And I realized, I mean, I thought it was only a 40 to 49% chance. I did think it was more likely than not that Trump wins, but 40% chance is a pretty good. When you're talking about losing your country, it's what the environmentalists or the anti-nuke people used to call the zero infinity problem. Even if it's
right.
a very small probability, the consequences of it happening are infinite. So yeah, I was going to write mysteries, stop giving speeches, get some beagles, and one of the things I was realizing recently. That actually sounded really fun.
Yeah, it doesn't sound bad, and I've got the beagles, and so I've got one of them.
No, I'm so jealous.
That was where you followed me on Twitter. I don't think you knew who I was, but this was about 3 years ago. You followed me on Twitter,
beagle.
And you wrote that I'm only following you specifically for the beagle picture. He's a very handsome. He's actually magnificent, Jobin. He hasn't been as much of a character on The Daily Show as The Weekend Show. He used to co-host with me on the weekends.
He did.
Yeah.
I bet he was very insightful, more insightful than anything on MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News, with a few minor
Well, he was a much better pundit than Rick Wilson because he actually because he wasn't wrong every time.
That's another one who's still all over TV.
All over TV.
Now
all
tell
over
us
TV.
What's going to happen, Rick?
Yeah. He's a media-approved conservative. So what are you doing for Thanksgiving? What are your plans?
Celebrating with so much to be thankful for, beginning and ending with Trump, with all Trump supporters. I spend my holidays at a secret, undisclosed location, playground of the rich and famous. And for the past year, I used to tell some of my friends, they'd have big dinner parties, and I remember walking into one saying, if one person at this dinner says something nice about Marco Rubio, I'm turning around and walking out. And no, somehow in the playground of the rich and famous, he had assembled an entire table of people who were completely Trump supporters. This is before the end of the year, Christmas time last year too. And so they're the ones I'm going to be spending my time with.
So what do you think happens to that crowd, that sort of establishment, conservative crowd, the AEIs of the world, though there are a couple of good people over there, and the National Reviews of the world? I've got, of course, a couple of good people over there, too. I'm just saying that the people who, by and large, are not really going to have a seat at the table during the Trump administration and clearly don't have a lot of friends on the left either. Well, what do they do with the Washington conservative establishment?
I think it's just got to be burnt to the ground. It's the only hope for the country. I now realize I used to kind of throw the consultants, the pollsters, everyone who lives in Washington basically in the same class as the plutocrats. But like I say, spending my vacations with the plutocrats aren't so bad. They're just busy. At least a lot of them aren't. Mike Murphy came to them and said, no, if you want less regulation and less trial lawyers destroying businesses and so on and so forth, you must donate. We need $1 million for Jeb ! And the plutocrats are busy. They figure Mike Murphy must know what he's talking about because he's expensive. Last Christmas, they were wandering around saying, dazed, jaws dropping open at all these parties, saying, I don't understand it. We were all for Jeb, but the Hispanic help is all for Trump. I love that so much. So the plutocrats, I think, are perfectly happy with Trump, or at least a lot of them, the ones who have an ounce of patriotism.
Yeah.
It's the ones in Washington. I just started following this guy who was the advisor to, well, I wasn't following. I was just reading his Twitter page. John Weaver, who ran McCain's campaign as the advisor to John Kasich. You want to have fun. You want a couple hours of fun, go read his Twitter feed. He's as crazy as Keith Olbermann, as is Stuart Stevens, as is Mike Murphy. All of Washington, it's got to be burnt to the ground. They're the ones who care more about their livelihoods, their careers, their TV gigs than the country.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Ann Coulter, In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome is the book. Her column comes out on Wednesdays. Breitbart gets about an hour jump on that, which is pretty cool. You could read it. We always feature it very high on the front page because it's always worth a read to figure out what's on Ann's mind. Ann, we only got a minute or so left in the segment, but I wanted to get your overall take on, I know we tend to talk about the domestic stuff now because that's the top priority, but I was curious internationally, do you see what's happening in France and Germany and elsewhere, and are you starting to think that this Trump revolution really could have global implications at this point?
I hope so, and it certainly makes sense. What is the matter with having countries? I noticed that all the people who are the most hysterical at saying at the people who think we should not deluge our country with people from very, very, very different cultures, all live in lily white neighborhoods. All will spend $50,000 a year to ensure that their kids only go to school with other very, very rich lily white kids. People, I mean, look, we're diverse, but we still want to have a country, and there's nothing the matter with wanting to be around people who are like you, whether you're French or Japanese or Russian. And it is a globalist idea that, no, we will turn the entire globe into this one beige blob, and then there will be no reason to move from one country to another, certainly not to vacation in one country or another, because it will all be the same. And the only people who make money off of that are the upper 0.001%. They're in Fat City because they get to negotiate the trade deals and litigate the trade deals. But the rest of us it's like losing your family. It doesn't mean you hate people who aren't in your family, but a country is like a family. And I hope Western Europe can save itself, because I'd still like to go visit. Yeah,
so would I. How do you think they reconcile the fact that they're multiculturalists, yet they don't want there to be borders? I just don't see how that works. This is just part
yes,
of, and
right.
This is part of. This is just how the left doesn't think clearly. You can't have both of these values.
No, you're absolutely right. That's a great point. How do we visit these, Aboriginal tribes and
right.
why we're so careful not to trample on their culture, but our culture has to become some blend of their culture. So I guess their culture has to become some blend of our culture, and then there is no multi. You're right. It's one boring, bland, beige culture.
And it's a pleasure, as always. We'll have you back so soon. Pick up In Trump We Trust, or any of Anne's books. Great Christmas gift as well. And we actually say Christmas here. Isn't that fun? Because we're on Breitbart.
Trump's going to have a big Christmas tree.
I bet he will. I bet it'll be massive. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.